In this post, I reviewed the Tempelhof Battlefleet set for Dystopian Wars. The angle of this review is strictly looking at the miniatures rather than the rules. If you are interested in the rules and stats, that's all available for free online. I will place all sorts of useful links, including those to where you can find the rules, in the description below. Now back to this video. We're going to open this box, take a look at what's in there, build the miniatures, and look at the variants that you can build with just what's in this box. As with most of my reviews, you're going to see the sprues and even have some scale comparison images as well. I will finally give you my thoughts on this product. Now, one of the things that I like so far about Dystopian Wars from Warcradle Studios is the options that you get within their box fleets. Take a look at this. The back of the box shows you the variants of the ships that you can build from this kit. You can build the fleet as pictured here, or differently. Looking at the box, you can build 4 frigates in up to 2 different ways. The 2 cruisers you can build in 3 different ways, and there's a carrier that you can build in 2 different ways. For my purposes, I'm going to build all the frigates and cruisers in the same way as what's on the back of the box. I will also show you the variant as we look at them dry built before I get to building the actual ships that I'm going to keep after I'm done with this review. Before going further, let me tell you about my channel. My name is Jay and you're watching Must Contain Minis. I do reviews and showcases of miniatures and miniature related products. My aim is to show you products by companies other than the largest on the market. In the interest of full disclosure, Warcradle Studios sent me these miniatures for review purposes. I also place affiliate links in the description below. If you use those, I earn a small commission from them if you end up making a purchase on those sites. Again, to keep you fully aware, the links that I earn a commission off of in the description below are all labeled as affiliate. Now let's get back to these minis. Just like opening the Wild West Exodus box that I recently reviewed in a written post on Must Contain Minis, opening up this product feels special. The cover slips off and you are left with a really nicely made box that feels like something that high-end chocolates might come in. Inside we find treats. Not the type that Mrs. Must Contain Minis likes, but instead the type I like, miniatures. To start, I found 16 bases, 1 resin ship and bubble wrap, and 2 plastic sprues. I pulled out the resin ship and immediately looked at the parts. The carrier is cool. It is fairly sizable, the resin on this is well done, and the piece for the plane is double-sided. One side has the fighter and the other side has a bomber. If you leave this unglued, you can swap around which side you want to have up. Very cool. I'm going to run this carrier as a bomber carrier variant. I then moved my attention to the sprues. Each sprue contains parts for 2 frigates and 1 carrier. You also have tokens for the planes, which are called SRS tokens. These sprues give you extra parts so you can make the variants that I mentioned earlier. You also take the guns from here for your carrier. More on that later. When I looked at the directions, I noticed that Warcradle tells you to wash your plastic frames and resin models before working with them. So in the tub they went. I started by giving them a bath in soapy water, rinsed them off, and then I gave them a bath in clear water. I then pulled them out and gave them time to dry before I started working on them again. With the models dry, it was time to start. I had a lot of fun putting these together. There are so many different ways that they can go. For the cruisers, you can build them as a Volsung Class Ship, which is good at close range attacks. That gun is devastating, but it can't hit anything that's too far away. As a note, the gun itself goes back a little further than I put it here. I just dry fit the model together for testing purposes. You can also build the ship as a Reiter Flak cruiser. This cruiser carries tons of anti-air firepower. This is how I wanted to build both of my cruisers, but it turns out that you can only build one of these 2 cruisers in this way. The reason is because you use the same anti-air guns on your carrier as you do for this cruiser. There is not enough parts on the sprues to build 2 flat cruisers plus the resin carrier. In the end, I decided to build both ships as Konrad Carriers. These are really neat looking ships that will maximize my force's air power. The details are really clean, and Warcradle even went so far as to give you planes to put below the decks. I'm not even sure if people will notice those planes in there once I start painting the models. Speaking of painting your cruiser, it would likely have been easier to do the painting of this model in sub-assemblies. You could paint the ship bottom, the runway piece, and the planes pieces all as separate items and then assemble it later. That said, I'm a wargamer and I tend not to worry about the details that people might not see. So I just glued it all together, and I will deal with how it goes when I actually paint the model. As far as building the ships, they were very straightforward to put together, and Warcradle has directions on their website. Again, there will be links in the description below. The rail system tracks on the Imperium ships are quite interesting. Now I'm going to go a little bit into the lore of the game at this point, but only at a very high level. The Imperium pulls their ships up to the docks and changes their loadouts with train engines. This makes the ships highly modular and easy to refit. I could likely magnetize the parts on these miniatures so I could make the different variants afterwards, but I didn't. I think it would have been easier to do that if I went with magnetizing the Volsung and the Reiter variants of the ship. The carrier has the bridge of the ship in a different position and the runway on top of it. The description of the Imperium using rails to outfit their ships gets my imagination going. I had a lot of fun playing with the concept and thinking about the idea of the ships changing their loadout while they're at the docks. It makes me want to look at the other ships that this faction has as well. Now let's take a look at the frigates in the set. These are extremely easy to build. If I mispronounce the names, I do apologize. You can build them as the Sigimer, which is a short to medium range firepower vessel, or as the Toten, which specializes in short range firepower. Here you see them side by side. I went with the Sigimer because I want a fleet to engage the enemy at a longer range. Let me show you the battle fleet that I made with the Tempelhof box set. Here I have 4 Sigimer frigates, 2 Konrad Class Carriers, and a Tempelhof Class Fleet Carrier. Depending on how I set up the Flagship, this group can launch 8 to 16 short-range squadrons a turn, which is basically fighter crafts. If I go with a setup that launches 8 fighters, that fleet can launch up to 4 bombers in addition to those 8 fighters. That is a lot of air power. Now let me show you how these guys stack up to other miniatures. The scale of Dystopian Wars is 1 to 1200. Alongside those miniatures, I have some ships from Oak and Iron. These ships are in the 1 to 600 scale. The Oak and Iron ships happen to be the sloop and the galleon. These are the largest and smallest ships that come in the core game box of Oak and Iron. You can see those ships are not nearly as wide or as long as the ships from Dystopian Wars. Their sails do make them taller though. Now I realize that not everyone is going to know about Oak and Iron. To help those people, here is another model for scale comparison purposes. Here is a Dystopian Wars ship alongside a Primaris Space Marine. Again, these are fairly large models. You can see they are very long compared to the base of the Space Marine. Let me show you a few more shots of the completed fleet. Overall, I like these miniatures and I found them to be a pleasure to build. I really like that you get multiple options on how to build them. That said, I could see the variety turning a few people off as you have to make decisions on how to build the miniatures right at the time that you open up the box. I see that as flexibility from the model kit as a positive, but it could be overwhelming to some new players. The only things I want to comment on as criticisms about this Battlefleet box are about the contents. One of the things I noticed is that you do not get a fighter token for every fighter you can launch. Instead, you end up stacking the bases on top of each other to represent multiple launch craft. If you were thinking that you would get 16 fighters in there, you do not. Now I flipped through the rules, and you actually do stack up the bases with the fighters on top of the blank bases. Each base represents a squadron, so you only need the top one to physically represent anything. I confirm that you are getting 16 bases to represent those fighters, but because there are 2 fighter tokens in there, you have to abstractly let your opponent know that the bombers represent fighters if you go with a fleet setup that launches all fighters from all 3 carriers. The other thing I want to mention is that you can't make 2 Reiter Flak cruisers from this Battlefleet box. The Sprues come with 8 flak guns. Each flak cruiser uses 4 of those guns, but the large carrier here uses 3 of those as well. That means that the most flak cruisers that you can get from this specific box while building that Carrier is just one. Warcradle will soon have an answer to that though. There is a box set coming out soon with just the cruisers and destroyers without the flagship carrier. This means that you will be able to build all the cruiser variants without restriction from the box set. Thank you for checking out the Tempelhof Battlefleet for Dystopian Wars with me. If you like what you see, please check out my website mustcontainminis.com and also my other videos on this channel. As a note, this video here is a video adaptation of a written review that I already completed on mustcontainminis.com. Until next time, happy gaming everyone!